Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack for Business truly is? Your hosts are Franzgrote from Kreativ Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc. So what can you expect from the Knack for Business podcast? The aim is to help you find your feet in the business world. Whether you're just starting out or you've been at it for a while, we have something for everyone. Today's topic is desk job to dream job. Bernie is great at making connections in groups like Phoenix Business Exchange, Grand Connections, and the World Referral Network. He also works with Clean Shield Solutions, promoting a green, clean platform. Also, within East Tradewinds, he helps others connect and grow their businesses. Bernie is known for his strong dedication to helping others succeed in business.
Hi, welcome to Knack for Business. Today I have the privilege of introducing my co-host, Bernie Franzgrote, and I have the luxury of asking questions. Some I know the answers of, some I don't. And one question, Bernie, what's your favorite quote or saying?
Just do it. Seen often by Nike ads, and just the art of just get going, rolling with it.
Bernie, you made the leap from a corporate desk job to founding Kreativ Insight. What were the key factors that pushed you into making that transition?
Well, Wayne, thank you for the intro. It was the year of 2018, and the thought was running in at a certain point in time, a good gig won't last forever. What do I want to do next? And starting to get in a certain age, and I felt there was some elements lacking in life. Not that what I was doing was awful or anything. I really enjoyed that job, enjoyed what I learned over the 36 years working at that healthcare institution. Wonderful space. But at the same point in time, it was kind of a nudge. And even that nudge was showing up in the early 2000s. There was an opportunity to get into business. Probably the wrong time for me. It was probably a little too green at that stage. And 2018 seemed like a good point in time. In November of 2018, Kreativ Insight was created as an entity. In January 2019, I retired from one universe to go into another one. That was the push. I decided Kreativ Insight was born, and I decided that the connecting people, leveraging what I had learned and become inside the hospital.
I've often said that Canadians are basically employees. There are other hospitals and healthcare institutions in Ottawa and other hospitals in other towns. What made you not look for a similar or better job? What made you seek that entrepreneurial freedom?
The role that I ended up with, my last role at the hospital, it was born out of a confluence of a merger of facilities. It was born out of opportunities that were available. And usually you have to have that networking piece before you can jump into it. Trust me, in the hospital space, a lot of people are network at a certain level. That wasn't something ingrained or trained into like routine. So I lacked those cross connections. But at the end of the day, what elements that were not, how should I say, I wasn't fond of, could easily work with, and not that they were wrong, but things that I wasn't fond of still be there. And so there would be limitations. And it's part of being within any organization, not just healthcare, but if you're in any large corporate space, there are certain boundaries they have, and they do that because they're large and trying to keep the ship running a certain way.
When I met you, you were promoting a cleansing technology that could actually make hospitals safer and Clean Shield Solutions. And I thought that was your main act. I knew you'd helped a couple of people, and a couple said, Bernie, who do you know? Who do you know became the business. How do you go from learning about a gig economy to actually building a gig economy?
So a couple of things were afoot in 2019. Doing the cross connections between businesses meant I had to go out and meet people. and make the connections. What do you do? The typical get to know and like you scenario was coming in. That scenario had to happen first. So what are you all about? What type of person are you? Feel comfortable doing business with you, etc. That evolved then into someone at the Clean Shield side, where someone said, "Listen, we have an idea. We see there's a massive need, and that's all courtesy of the pandemic." Someone had a solution that was ecologically friendly, effective against viruses, spores, mold, bacteria, and anything else that would do you harm that was really small and microscopic. And so there's a couple other individuals that I knew, brought them in, and we formed a company. And then it evolved from there. The goal was not to own the project at the end of the day, almost like doing a short-term stint in this space. We've worked on a land trust and doing a promotion, how they can build out a nonprofit or a social enterprise in that space. Worked on some solutions that we offered them. And then also we have East Trade Winds, where both you and I are hosts in this particular space, where we have a meeting and chats with people. It's something that's evolved over time. It's a good fit, makes sense. Was it planned out in 2019? Nope. As things move around, we've adapted. And same thing with Clean Shield. The original intent was adapted from 2020 to 2024.
Something that interests me is some people came alongside. I know one was very involved in the internet. I know another was very involved in trying to build a co-working site. And Bernie, you know a lot of people. Can you help me? And I think you want to respond because you're a good guy. But what twigged you that, hey, there might be a business here?
A lot of these people, to either find a resource or promote a product or a service, would have to have an extensive army around them, sales crew or a marketing team, and so forth. Part of what I do is a microcosm of that. As I'm talking to somebody and the need is apparent, I'll say, "Listen, you should meet this person. This person has something you could utilize, or you could help them. Or even better yet, you both are looking for the same audience, and together you can do more as opposed to doing it as siloed work." You used to see that in the hospital too. I mean, you're siloed. All of a sudden, there's another department doing somewhat similar things or things that could help you. If someone doesn't make that cross connection, you could have a facilities department and a nursing department, two different worlds. They do collaborate, but sometimes if you're doing a task and you don't know how the outcome is going to affect something, then that could be adverse or could be a better outcome. You work in collaboration. If we're talking about AdHive, that particular space, Yovan, for example, I knew when I was in the hospital. From the Gentry Real Estate, Gentry Learning, and the Property Wizard podcast, Fred Crutch, I knew him when I was in the hospital working there. We'd worked on different projects, and I stayed in touch since then. I've always focused on making sure there's success and good collaboration. It's not all one way. It's a two-way street. Anytime you're doing a favor for somebody, and I say a favor, but you're doing a connection. If there's money that exchange hands, you can earn a commission out of that. It's not being larcenous. It's not being mercenary. They just realize they didn't have to spend that money on marketing, and I've just done something for them that provides a positive yield. I've asked them for advice, and they provide it. Sometimes it's quid pro quo. There is no coin exchange in the realm, but it's a sharing of information and growth. We all want each other to succeed. Ultimately, that's the grand goal.
When we're doing podcasts, we ask about the origin story. The interesting part of my origin story to meet Bernie was I was with Carl Richards in Gananoque, which is a town near to me. And I said, I need to grow my business out of Kingston. Who can I meet? Who do you know? How do I get in some faces? He said, you have to meet Bernie. He's a super connector. I called Bernie and I said, hi, Carl recommended you. Could we talk? And we did. And the rest of the story is 3 years later. one thing that impressed me is that you found a way to keep this database of people that you're helping or trying to help front and center, that I could see becoming a business. We all have those 5 people we drink coffee with, and who do you know that? But you at some point decide to make it a business. One thing that interests me in this is when you were thinking about networking years ago and how you even wish you had done it more at the hospital, you were not a rah-rah, extrovert, drum beating guy. How did you overcome that so that you could help others, hopefully help yourself, and build business?
It's a credit back to the healthcare institution that I was at. There's different programs where I was an instructor. And when you talk to multiple staff, it was nonviolent crisis intervention course. When you have to teach nursing, PSWs, other staff, this technique, you get up there, you have people practice things. It's an educational piece that pushes you forward to bring your inner self out. And then my boss originally started, said, listen, you got to get used to doing presentations. You don't have to sing, but you have to get up and be able to do a presentation, because someday someone's going to say, tell me why this is happening, or tell me what you want to do next. In my last 20 years, every year there would be an annual GM, annual general meeting for the board, because the business I was involved with was a separate corporation. They had a certain format. There are people around to help structure it, et cetera, but you have to express what your needs are, because you have to present your budget. I'm looking to do this. So there's a lot of pre-meetings. And then when it comes to the day of, it's just a matter of going, what are we doing? Do we all agree? And then we're off to the races. If there's any questions, be able to answer them. And then there was a finance director I kept dealing with, and he always had questions for everything. I always had answers for him. In fact, one day he says, why do you always have answers for me? He says, well, why do you always have questions for me? I mean, it was kind of rhetorical. You're going to ask a question, there's an answer. Typically, though, there is no answer. The correct answer is, I'll find out. Right? You just don't let it sit there and die off. There's always an action, and you keep it in a positive spin. It helps even more. That way, it's not adversarial. Since 2019 to now, there are different people I've had chats with that help you understand what you're facing when you're talking to somebody, how to engage them, reframe it, keeping it positive. The auto response might not have been the right one for the circumstance. It wouldn't have meant going to HR. Would have been more going to, not getting a positive feedback. So it's the collaboration piece. Now, does that mean I don't run into people that make me wince? Yeah, I do, but that's okay. That's part of the journey. If it's always smooth, then something's wrong, right? No one's perfect. The answers aren't always going to be yes. And sometimes Providence doesn't take you down the path you think you should be going on. It takes you down a path, and you just look for the opportunities. And again, this goes back to Fred. He said, if there are no problems, there are no opportunities. So you look for those moments. And then from the networking side, the opportunities and the problems is when you're sitting there and you're going, that person has that problem. That person has the opportunity to help fix it. Or there might be a solution to map out.
A couple of things that struck me. One of them is you are pretty good at avoiding people that are super salesy. I believe that you strive for authenticity rather than perfection. I think part of it is a smell detector, and part of it's you ask really good questions. And how do you get a sense of who you're referring to so that it doesn't blow back up in your face?
Well, if you've had a chat with somebody, gotten to know them, the know, like, trust factor piece, right? So that's kind of the basis of everything. And then you have that same conversation, that same connection with another party. You'll know that if they're oil and water and they're never going to mix well, you don't introduce them. So there are some people, if you're looking for something that's hard and fast and straight, but it's a very short transaction, I need this done, end of story. I don't want to know about your family. If you need that, it's almost like a mercenary piece. Then here you go. Here's the person. As long as you know they can do the job. If it's another person where it involves more synergy between the individuals, then you try to match those people up. There are people I've crossed paths with. I know they won't do well with another person. Not that there's anything wrong with what the service is. It's just their personalities or their operating styles are going to be in conflict. You and I have interviewed people, and afterwards you've gone, Bernie, you're looking at me and you're going, oh, Bernie, and I'm going, it's okay. It's a flavor. It may not be your flavor. It may not be my flavor. But it might be someone else's flavor. And, that's what's important. Like if you walk into an ice cream shop, I am not into mint peanut butter cup ice cream whatsoever. My wife might be. And you know what? That's okay. So I'm trying to find that to fit.
When you join a networking club, you're sometimes a little cautious about giving someone a lead because you don't want to go back in your face. How do you test if collaborations work? How do you follow up? And how do you try to make a referral a positive experience that's actually win-win-win rather than just a one-way win?
So you got to ask the question in 2019, Bernie, how do you know that something has worked well? And, are you getting remunerated for it? And I replied back to the person and said, the grass won't grow if it's not watered. If the feedback is coming back that this didn't work out well, I immediately start recalibrating who and what I'm introducing. And I usually ask, what's with the person that's, this wasn't a good fit. What didn't you like? So it tells me if I've either misread or there's something I didn't understand about that persona. Conversely, I'll go back to the other person and I think about my past connection with them. What worked? What were the tells that would make a good fit or a bad fit? And sometimes I could see a collaboration point that may not be a one-to-one, but might have one and then two layers deep, a crossover. Because we've had interviews with people and all of a sudden we find out their spouse is into the eco space. Oh, I know someone that's into that space. It might be a good cross fit. And, it helps them out, provides leverage, some distance, some mileage for their communication. You got to keep in mind, not everything is coming in where is this going to make me a dime? It's good to have, it helps pay for things, but not everything's about making the dime. Sometimes it's about making a really good connection, and that builds your network. That builds who you are. Then when you come asking, let's say I get involved with a project, I might need somebody that has expertise in a certain area. You want to be involved in this project. Or can I utilize your services? And this is what's happening. In which case I build back the cost, the expense, and the time.
Something that I find very interesting is in the 70s and 80s, maybe even in the 90s, networking was viewed as a value add to marketing. And now I've talked to people that said networking is my marketing. If I'm going to spend $200 a month joining some organization, that's an ad I don't have to run because it didn't create any eyeballs. So how have you found that the marketplace and media have changed your response to being in networking organizations?
My view is, and for what I do, I have to talk to people. I have to meet them. Now, if I were selling, I don't know, widgets, then, who's my widget audience? Where do I find them? Are they in a networking group or do I try to find a distributor inside the networking group? In which case, are there people that can do that for me? They'd be what we call channel partners. And if they're not there, well, then, that won't have a good yield for me. But if my strategy is to talk to somebody else and they might have a channel partner. And again, we've seen that with our podcast. We're talking to somebody, and all of a sudden the person says, you should talk to this individual. And they're totally left or right field from where we are right now. It's for our Knack for Business podcast. They come in and have a chat. And sometimes that leapfrogs one person, and then it's like these degrees of separation from somebody, right? Might be 3 degrees over, and then there you go. You've got your connection. Again, the marketing thrust, if I'm selling to a large consumer base, well, then I should be focusing on either the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, or running ads on local TV, depending what I am. If I'm online ordering or bricks and mortar, there are different ways to approach that. So you got to gauge what you're doing. From the networking side, what I want to do, what I can do, and how I connect.
One of the more famous networking people is Ivan Meisner, Mr. B&I. And he talks about giver's gain. And I have been at networking opportunities where who can I sell somebody to? What can I sell? And I learned over the years, and you've helped teach me, how can I help you is a much better question than will you buy my product? And how did you integrate how can I help into more than just a slogan? How did it become in your DNA?
When you work in the healthcare space, even though my last role was in business development, your focus is you're there to help somebody. Yeah, you're funded, you're getting a salary, so that's always in play. I mean, if you're not a good person, then you're not going to get paid because you're not going to be there anymore. But if you're doing the actions, you're looking at how can I improve a situation, either short term or overall structure. In business development roles we had at the hospital, it was either you're saving a cost, or you bring something forward that costs no more, no less, or the best was it'll generate some revenue back for the institution, or for a cause or a goal of the institution. You're always looking for ways that you can add in and contribute. What's the pain point? What's the new way of addressing it? Or is there a better way of addressing something in the space? I mean, there's a reason why they have coffee shops inside hospitals, right? They brought the brand in. You had bank machines at one point in time. Those were quite lucrative. If you needed cash, there you go. In fact, some of the bank machines I was involved with at one point in time would offer a coupon as part of the receipting. That was one of the other offers. So you try having things in there that provide value back.
So I like that value back. That's neat. One thing that interests me is you were a co-host of a podcast, and I stirred the pot and said, well, maybe we could do a podcast. And you got thinking, well, what would I hope to get out of this podcast? Two questions. How do you see podcasting build your business? And in your 2 years, what have you found that has changed and what you thought the podcasting would do versus how it's actually shaped out?
The function of the podcast is just an extension of what I was doing before, or what we're doing. It's connecting people. It provides an hour-long conversation with somebody. Well, it takes an hour, we book an hour. It can be anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes long. The purpose is that if I'm talking to somebody, say, listen, you want to meet this person, here's a podcast. You can have a listen and talk. It also reinforces to me the connection I've had, because sometimes that person I haven't talked to for almost a year, maybe 6 months or 3 months. And I'm going, yep, that just reminds me and refreshes me on what's going on. And it helps build a library of, again, this is a way to look at, sure, build up a library of who you are connecting with. And so this just adds another value to that library. And then when you're introducing somebody, work that, plus you're getting content. And the other piece I like into the Knack for Business podcast is like having a little mini MBA course where you are gathering all kinds of information, and self-edification is happening, and you're able to share that information. Plus, then you have all the content. You can start parsing it out. I mean, we have over 220 podcasts in the can, and this season 3, it's going to add more to it, add at least another 100 to the overall impact. So all that information is now being condensed in one spot. So I should say that not just condensed, but it's in one spot, but it's big. We get like 200 hours worth of people talking.
It needs scrambled eggs. To this day, I still find that networking clubs need scrambled eggs. If you just handed in your notice, you're just going to start that business, what one actual piece of advice would you give to make that first meaningful business connection?
Well, I think this goes back to the title of our talk, right? Desk job to dream job. And so if you're in the stage where you're looking at, here's my career now, and you're feeling an inkling, you want to shift gears, whether it's an abrupt turn or it's something you want to do as a sideline business and then evolve it over time. Because I've seen that happen in the hospital space where different persons or different directors even, or managers or other staff have sidelines, and then when their one career kind of closes out because enough's enough, they start up another one, and it keeps the revenue going, keeps the mind fresh, and keeps the soul agile. So you want to start establishing connections with other people, networking. Doesn't necessarily have to be any of the ones we've mentioned. It can be, you can go on Meetup and to find other groups that are a good fit. You can be involved with a volunteer organization. It's varied. There's all kinds of different places you can go and start cross connecting. One of the things you really want to do is that cross connecting prior to exit. That way you don't have to learn everything hard and fast. The other thing is, you can always reach out to Wayne Pratt from Motivate You, because that's part of the goal of what he does. He helps coach you on finding that best path. And in fact, he's coached me since we've met on different things. And that's how this podcast happened today, because it was like at his insistence, you got to talk about yourself. Otherwise, you're an unknown per se, except to the people that you talk to. So that's the power of connecting with other people. It's networking isn't always about selling. Networking is about getting informed, getting feedback, getting sagely advice. And then again, I go back to, talking to Jovan and Fred. There's another gentleman, his name is Mike Shaughnessy. Yeah, because they've all provided advice after I left the hospital. They weren't the reason why I left the hospital. I retired, but they were resources post hospital, post healthcare. And at the end of the day, I've been fortunate to be surrounded by really good people. There've been some odd souls where and you know what? If someone's not jiving with you, don't hang with them, right? If that's causing you a problem, just back away or be mindful. All right, keep your eyes open.
Bernie, chances are, if they're listening to this, they know about Knack for Business. They know about our podcast. But on East Trade Winds or for Kreativ Insight, how do they get a hold of Bernie?
Well, first off, it's B Franzgrote, so BFRANZGROTE at kreativinsight.com. So KREATIVINSIGHT.com. Website's kreativinsight.com. The Knack for Business, it's the word knack as in knock, except with an A, the number 4, and the word business. And you can find us on any major podcast channel. So whether you're on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever it is. And East Trade Winds, if you just go on LinkedIn and just type in East, then Trade, and then Winds, it will pop up. The beautiful thing is that East Trade Winds, it's free to attend. And you can come when you can. We host a meeting every Tuesday, 8 to 9 Eastern, except for some summer months and some Christmas weeks. We're not there, but we're pretty much available. And
I would like to thank my co-host and guest, Bernie.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@kreativinsight.com or by the website kreativinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, Wayne@motivate.uca. That is MOTIVE. The numeral 8 and the letter U.ca, or his website, Motivate.U.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host; Jovan Strika from AtHive, a co-working space that is more than just a space; then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner; and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.